Well, welcome, guys, back to the Raised Hunting Podcast. And we're going through some cleanup quickly, and we're trying to get figured out on. We gave away 2 hats last week to people that entertain. What was it? Was it for your
leaving reviews?
Oh, leaving reviews.
Yeah.
It didn't have nothing to do with Wacky Warren or Warren Wacky whatever.
No.
Okay.
And as you can see, there's only 1 hat left.
Hey, that actually goes better. Warren Wacky whatever instead of Warren's Wacky Fact, because then it's WWW.
But whatever.
The worldwide.
He doesn't tell you
Warren's
what you're
Wacky
talking
whatever.
about.
Whatever. All right, so we want to thank you guys again because we ask for your help, and you guys do it. The reviews keep coming in, and both on Apple and on Spotify. I said it right. Not Shopify.
Cole_Courtney. If you're listening to this one, you won one of the hats. Chef Scott, yours is in the mail, so that's why the second one's gone. But Cole Courtney, you won last week, and you haven't claimed your hat yet. If you responded to the podcast, you got to remember we don't know how to respond on those. So you got to send us an email or Facebook or Instagram with your address and stuff so we can get you your hat shipped out. But we had two other people we got shout out this week. WCW80 says we love to argue. He loves the fact these guys truly do argue with each other. I just started listening to podcasts and they disagree all the time, but they let it go and move on.
We do not.
And then
yeah, we do.
Castler
No, we don't.
66.
Yeah, we do.
So huge thank you to all you guys that gave us the 5-star reviews, and to whoever gave us the one star. We know you're a crossbow hunter. Okay.
Wow, he just went there. I thought
There's another one
star.
inbound now. I'm guarantee it.
I thought that was. They actually gave us a 1-star. That's recent.
I know, it's just irritating because now it's 4.9.
Oh, they definitely got to be a crossbow hunter. You're right.
But thank you guys for those reviews because you guys have been sending them, and we really appreciate it. We went way over 100 on Spotify, so that's awesome.
Statistically speaking, that would be probably correct. Going off of that, we just
I
released that one not too long ago.
I would bet the farm on it.
All right.
Well, that's not much to bet.
Sorry.
So.
I still stand by where what my views were. So, long story short, we have another person though. Devin, goes by Iowa Bow Hunter, has given us our topic for this week, and we think it's a pretty good one. We're going to talk about glandular scents and communicating by glandular scents.
And some of the hoaxes out there.
Yeah, and some of the BS stuff and, the different things. And the only thing is I hate that people are going to think that we're biased because we sell scents.
Well, that's why we sell the scents, because we found something that we do believe in.
That's
the reason. Not because we think that we can make a gimmick out of it or make money off of it. It's because here's the right way to do it, not
true
trying to tell people everything else.
If we wanted to do that, we'd be selling scent control.
Warren. That's specific to Warren.
I have to laugh because everyone who he's asked about scent control, even the ones that say they don't believe in it, they still do it.
Hey, I don't blame them. I just not going to put myself through the position of changing in the woods and stuff. I do enough things in the woods that are are very questionable, so I don't need to add being naked.
You don't need to know about that.
Yeah.
So how do we want to start? Who wants to start as far as the glandular world goes?
I think you could start number one, just the differences. What glandular is versus your typical scent / urines or attractants. Okay. And what the big benefits. I mean, there's pros and cons to both, if we're being completely honest. You want to be transparent. There's going to be pros to both and cons to both. But I think from where I was at, I'm just kind of putting myself in the position of where we were when we first started this venture. I wasn't super clear on the difference of a glandular lure versus...
Well, let's talk. First, maybe we should define what the glands are.
Just tell them we're all... Well, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, we've put out a diagram of them. Okay.
That's fine.
No, I think we should, just because that gives you a baseline of what they are, what they do, and why it would be important.
Okay. So start with the ones that commonly people probably know, which would be the tarsal gland. Okay, that's found in the rear leg
also known as the hocks,
or the hocks.
Some people call them hocks.
Yep, and typically white-tailed deer, especially bucks, will urinate on those, let it run down their leg, and then it puts a odor on them as well as, but they're secreting something
called
there.
Rub urinating.
Yep.
And so they're not actually producing any kind of scent. What they're producing is an oil that is
then
within
holds
their
the
tarsal gland.
Yes.
So when they pee down their leg and the urine mixes with that oil, that's what makes the scent. So when you smell a rutted up buck and it's that pungent, I mean, it's powerful.
And you see them doing that goofy
you see
thing
them like
where
rubbing
their legs
together.
Yep.
That's what they're doing. So that's one of a fun fact about the tarsal gland. It has no odor, technically.
That's not the goofy fact nor the wacky fact. That's just fun fact.
That's just actually a beneficial fact for anybody that hunts. Not
mine are beneficial.
Okay, so that's one. Then there's the metatarsal, which is the little dot that is lower down on the leg,
about 2 inches from the hoof.
Yep.
You'll see one tuft of hair going the other way. Typically, it's a lighter color.
A different color.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time they're white, but
Okay.
they haven't found any benefit to this yet, and I've kept up on that research.
Okay, so then the third one, which now we get into one that you got to be careful of, the interdigital. Okay, and that is the scent that deer put off when they stomp their feet or when they're walking. They're always putting off some sort of a scent, but they specifically can put off, when they put off more of that scent, which is them stomping their feet, it can be work against you. Matter of fact, we've joked with coming out with a scent that we could go put it out there to keep the deer away.
Yeah.
Well, we can keep moving on as far as going over the overview of the glands, but at the same time, I do think that we should come back, and we're going to tell you guys some of the facts and stuff behind each one of the glands, or some of the more important things, because the amount of you guys that call in, I love it because I get to talk about hunting, but call in to our websites and stuff, or to our website or to our phone number, and ask us about some sort of what scent of ours to use right now. Like they all could be used right now, but I would like for you guys to know some of the facts that is in my head. I mean, they're genuine facts, but I have them in my head. That's what's determining, okay, this one does this, or I know that this little fact.
That's going to be a pretty short segment.
Yeah, well, I know about 10 times more than you, so I'm pretty sure it'd be longer than your segment.
It's
Anyways.
like we were golfing yesterday.
Where is this coming from?
It's got nothing to do with our scents.
Well, it was just really funny.
Wait a minute.
Comment that we made.
Didn't he tell us that we'd take too long and talk about... So
yeah, shut up. My point here is that we are going to give you guys facts. We're going to tell you guys some of the main things about what each gland does, the difference of each gland, so that you can ask yourself what you ask me all the time, which one to use, when to use it.
There you
Is
go.
it a fact that you're going to give us some facts?
Okay, so next
Shut
one.
up, Warren.
The next one, and these are in no particular order, would be a preorbital, which is basically from the inside of the eye or between the eye and the nostril. But just think of like where you build up sleep on your eye. That's what the preorbital is of a whitetail buck.
You build up sleep there?
When you sleep, you build up that goop there.
What?
So.
What?
I thought the Sandman put that there.
You can tell that Warren is not invested in today's podcast topic.
Don't you remember that? They would tell us
yes,
as kids
Warren, I remember what that is. But it's the only two comments you've had this whole time have been
orbital.
That's a great question.
Because it's not in the orbit.
Well, yeah, I'd say that it's not.
Before?
Orbital
It's
is
right
in your eye.
Couldn't that technically be post-orbital?
No, because
that'd
it's
be
before
behind
you
him.
get there.
That'd be in his skull.
So why would this be determined as the front, though, instead
Are
of...
you flipping me off right now?
Of course, but it wasn't intentionally.
Preorbital. In the front of the eye.
That is beside the point.
I was just curious.
I don't know. I didn't name these. Okay. So then the next one is the salivary gland. So the salivary gland is inside the mouth. You'll see a lot of times that these deer, especially bucks and does, when they're working a scrape, they look like they're eating the limbs or eating the leaves, and they're not. They're just putting their salivary gland all over that. And then when they pull their mouth out, you see the leaf is still there.
Sometimes they like to eat
Sometimes they eat them, but you can tell the difference typically. All right, and then forehead gland is going to be just what it is. It's right on their forehead between their antlers typically. Whitetail does have it, but it's not near as prevalent as what it is on a buck. And you'll see that it'll actually change the color of their forehead if they secrete too much of it.
We've seen does use it, though.
They do use it.
And what we mean by that is rubbing a tree.
Yeah, for sure.
Trail camera video of a doe going ham on a tree.
Yep. And then there's another one that's in the nostrils. And
there's 2 or 3 others.
Yeah, there are some others, but I've covered all the ones that.
We're not going over any of the sexual glands or organs
Right.
or the nasal, because we don't do anything with that. We did go over the metatarsal, although we don't use that either. But
Right.
that's your. I mean, we have 5 main ones that are your main points of communication,
Correct.
as far as we know, as far as research knows.
Yeah, we're just
right now.
following what the research tells us. But a lot of what you're going to hear that we talk about is trial and error. I mean, that's where a lot of, at least for me, that's where it came from, was seeing what they were doing. And so I don't know what we want to talk. Do you want to go into what we think we're saying and what we're using? Because that's the question that everyone wants to know is, what should I be using now?
Yeah, and when.
And then in a month later, they want to know, what should I be using now? What should I be using now?
Well, do we want to differentiate glands and urines?
Sure.
I'd say, well, number one, you have a consistency factor with glands. And glands, the consistency of what they're doing is going to be consistent. That's what I mean by what I said. But urines, you don't know. So urines, the reason I say that is because at any given time, everybody knows that a urine, that's why you can't, like, you have to clean up your dog's pee on the ground and it's in the house, because eventually that turns into ammonia. That turns into ammonia. A dog knows that, okay, I smell that ammonia, I smell that urine. It's a place that they are familiar with being able to go to the bathroom to.
Well, it's also does it really fast, doesn't it?
Well, that's
It
the
can.
other thing I was going to say. So the moment that urine is exposed to oxygen, your timer starts, basically. So you could, the inconsistency there, because you can go research this and try to prove me wrong or scientists wrong. I don't really care either way. But you have anywhere from 5 seconds to a couple hours of what it could last. So that comes into play with where it's being produced, number one, because a lot of these places are using some kind of climate-controlled and sunlight-controlled area to get a doe and to heat a buck in a certain area or whatever, and then they're collecting these from stainless steel areas in pins, basically. And so depending on how long they've been exposed to oxygen in the first place, then they're getting put into a bottle. So you might have one bottle that hasn't been exposed as long as the other one, so it's going to last a little bit longer. But then once you put it out, you have anywhere from, that could be on your scrape on the ground, and it could last for maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Do great. But the moment that that starts evaporating and then also turning into ammonia, then you're into that's nothing different for a deer. A deer, obviously, they're used to ammonia. Like, they all are peeing. They're all urinating places, so that always turns into ammonia. And so there's no differentiating. That's why, like, a scrape and a rub is so significant to deer, because there's so many different scents that are there that they are either that scent, or once they start to wear off, they're gone. But 9 times out of 10, other deer are putting their scent on it too, and that's staying there. And so they're not used to certain types. And even when another deer is coming to a scrape, and say Warren the buck came and walked up and made a scrape,
The dog
after
buck.
a week or whatever, and that scent starts to
Fork
go
it
away,
Yeah, you wish.
then another doe comes up, let's say.
210, that's about
Would you
what it is.
listen?
I
Another
am.
doe comes up, and she hits it. So Warren's is starting to wear off, and you could argue the fact, okay, well, if they're all using the same gland, then it's the same thing as urine. Well, it's still not, because each gland is so specific to a deer. Doesn't matter what gland it is. If we had the powers of a deer, we could smell each other and know exactly what person is here, when, how old, their age, and their health status, all sorts of things.
Well, that's
from one thing.
That's what I think people need to understand, is that the glands are actually telling the deer.
That's how they're communicating.
Yes.
I think you should explain real quick. Is there any communication inside of urine?
No.
No, it's
There's
just an
not.
identification.
The
I think
simple form of urine is that there's another deer there, and if it was, like, say, a doe in heat,
I was going to
It's
say,
another
what
d-
about
Okay,
when
hold
there
on.
is a doe in heat? Does that urine, is it an agent? Does it carry anything? Is there any communication aspect to urine at that time?
yes, that's why when I'm telling you guys how they're collecting. Oh my gosh, Christo, you're distracting.
I'm just trying to make sure it's clear for everybody, because I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of people that don't understand. Which is, and it's no fault of theirs. It's been
No,
told
it's hard to
forever that
understand.
that urine is
Well, that's why
the thing.
they can literally control So a deer farm can control when they're getting their
right,
doe
so they
in
can
heat
collect it when
anytime.
the doe is in heat.
Which
They
is
can
why
induce
they
them,
have.
can't they?
They don't have to induce them. All they have to do is they put them in a room, and it's a light and temperature controlled. So literally, all they're doing is
They don't
know
just put a sexy buck in there.
no, they aren't on a time sequence. That's not how their cycles are working. How their cycles are working is that during fall and winter is the shorter periods of time in which the temperature is lower and there's less sunlight. That's when their body tells them to go into heat.
Which
And
is
so
why the rut doesn't change.
Exactly. And so that's also how they can put them in a room, control the amount of sunlight that's in it and the temperature that's in it, and send them into a heat anytime. Then they collect their urine. And so, yes, there is a difference with a doe in heat versus just a doe urine or a buck urine. When a doe is in heat, it's completely different. I mean, it smells completely different, but you still have the same exact issue of how long will it last? It could last
So
5
what
seconds.
glands would be important when a doe is in heat?
Every gland, plus that is where if you could extract it, which there's not much, as far as I can tell, there's not much way to extract it, would be sexual glands, but as well as their interdigital is almost bar none number one. That is the most important, in my opinion, the most important gland you can possibly get from a doe in heat. And that is because every guy, every girl, every person that's hunted long enough or hunted once or twice during the rut, and you see a buck running around with his nose on the ground, and everybody calls it, oh, he's bird dogging through the field, and we're just thinking that he's smelling where the other deer are at. He's not. He's systematically doing something,
right,
because he can. Every time a doe steps down on the ground,
it's our interdigital
interdigital
that's
is leaving
being
behind.
left the scent.
And not only is it telling him that there's a doe there, whatever it is, it's telling him exactly what doe, if she's close to being in heat, if she is in heat, and even what direction she went. So when we see them running around, one, they're probably running the direction that the doe went. Number two, they probably know that girl is real close to being prime. And number three, they're going to be able to find her pretty easy and know where she is already. And he can probably smell if there's another buck on her trail or not.
Which is a great example when you've had doe and heat go by you before, and
watch that trail.
Other bucks are coming, but you also always are hoping that she walked 20 yards in front of you, because otherwise it don't matter. He ain't coming. You can grunt at him. You can rattle at him. You do whatever you want. Yep, he is stuck.
Okay, so now let's talk about, though, because I do think that what you're talking about are facts, are data-formed opinions. I want to talk a little bit about the average guy out there that has bought urine. I for one, have done it, man. I mean, there was a time when I bought all kinds of it. There was a time when Tinks stopped me on the side of the road because I had a Tinks jar sitting on the hood of my truck, on the dashboard of my truck. I lived in Virginia. I'm driving down the road, and dude waves me over and says, "Here, I'll give you some for buying our product. Thank you." And the only times that I ever got urine to work, but I've had it work, was I used to put it on cotton balls in a little 35 millimeter. Well, now I'm really dating myself. 35 millimeter canister.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking.
And I poked holes in it. And so anyhow, one time I had my little canisters out around my stand, and a doe stepped on it. And when she stepped on it, the forked horn buck that was behind her freaked out. I mean, he was trying to do everything he could to knock her off of her feet, and I ended up shooting him.
Yep.
And so it worked. The only other time that I could truly say that I 100% had doe in heat work was in Arkansas. I had moved from Virginia to Arkansas, and I just started to think, because I had bought it numerous times from that point forward, and I'd have deer walk across it. It didn't seem like it worked. Then I started kind of paying a little bit of attention and started realizing when these deer pee, they pee quite a bit. And I'm trying to, when I'm buying my scent, I don't want to put a whole bunch on there because I can only afford so much. So what I did in Arkansas that day was I got a rag that was clean, and I poured the whole bottle on there. And I said, okay, now we're going to see if this has an effect. And I tied it in a tree, and then I was actually gun hunting. And I had like 5 different bucks. The biggest one was like a forked horn, spike after spike, and they came to it. But they did come to it when it was like that. And then the only other one that I've had work is a dripper.
Yeah,
where I had something where consistently dripping there, and that was before trail cameras, so I didn't have a trail camera on it, but I shot a buck standing underneath that dripper.
Yeah. So the other part about that too is that you have, like what you're saying there is how many guys, because I would be in there too. I've used it before and I've had it work. How many guys would you ask that have you used urines or lures and attractants of the sorts? And a lot of them, some of them would tell you not a chance, it doesn't work, it's a gimmick. Some of them would tell you, oh, 100% it works. Out of all the guys that say it works, you should ask them how many times or how consistently it works.
Yep.
Because that's the key to it. And I've had the same. I haven't had that many experiences, but I've used it enough where I'm like, man, that's clear as day that thing hit that trail, and it's coming right to me. And then I've had other times where they hit the same trail and they don't even care. It doesn't even
lift
stop
their
them,
head.
which is another point to the fact of how fast it's evaporating or how fast it's turning into ammonia.
Well, I can only say that, and I never put a number to it. I will now because I know that for the amount of times that I bought doe urine and used doe urine and that had it work, I'm probably at 2 or 3%.
Yeah.
Meaning 98% of the time it didn't do a thing. Now, one that I can tell you that works extremely well is cover scent by using a coon. I put that stuff on a rag one time and drug it to my stand, and I had every coon in the country trying to climb a tree with me. And it was a buddy's coon. It was a male. And so that was the problem. So I had all these male coons that were all trying to mark their territory. So
hilarious being a stand having to fight off coons, right hook, left hook.
I had like 4 different coons, though, that tried to climb the tree with me during the day.
I bet they'd have no problem ganging up on you and ripping you apart.
Well, that was annoying. So, but when it comes to doe urine, we got to this point where I warded off urine, all urines. I didn't do it strictly because it wasn't working. I did it because I also had a bad experience with it.
Yeah.
And most of you out there that have used urines have probably had something where you got it on your fingers, or your wife smells it after you dumped it on your shoes, or you poured it on your boot, or something like that. And I finally was like, this is not worth the hassle. I'm done with it. I won't use any of it at all. And so then I went for a long time of just trying to not be there. I didn't want to do anything that would signify that I was adding anything to the area. Hence the reason scent control. And I know you don't believe in it, Warren, but I was trying to pretend like that I don't exist, that there's nothing there. So I didn't use any scent control. I used scent control. I didn't use any cover scents. I didn't use any kind of urines, no attractants whatsoever. It wasn't until a few years ago when someone introduced me to Glandular Scents and said, you need to try these. And I was like, not happening. And now the first thing, it was a positive and it was a negative. The positive was he handed the jar to me open. Said, just smell it. It does it. Because I told him, I said, I don't want that stinky stuff anywhere near me. And he said, it doesn't smell. Whatever. And he says, it doesn't. It's not urine. And so I took a whiff of it and I had to get right close to it to smell it. And I was like, okay, that's not as strong as urine, but that probably means it works less. Well, that wasn't the case at all.
No, it's because it's picking out the right scent.
I didn't understand that there was a communication to this.
Yep.
And so, but anyhow, so long story short, I went from being the guy that tried all the stuff that gimmicks type stuff to not using anything at all, to coming back to saying, okay, I'm going to be more factual driven off what I'm using. But that's not really a fact. The fact that it doesn't smell as strong is not that was just a positive point for me.
Yeah.
That I was like, all right, cool. If you get a little bit on your fingers, I can wipe it off on a leaf and it's gone.
Yep.
So
there's for our Devin, he would be one that brought this topic up, but as far as when you're using them and things, the other nice part is that they're not just communicating during the rut.
Correct. We're using it now.
Yeah. We use it year round, but a urine, I'm pretty
sure that it's better
just wait till the rut kind of thing.
Right.
And
either right before it, during it, or right after. Or it better be connected to that.
They're communicating 100% year round. Now, how much? It depends. They might not be as consistent, maybe dead of winter when they're completely out of the rut. They're just trying to survive. They're not too worried about things. But there is plenty of times where I have scrapes that are in snow that stay open throughout the winter because that's how they make sure that their herd is good. As much as we think that you see some of them together. You might see 50 to 100 out in a field, or 10 or 15 depending on where you live. Doesn't matter. you think that they're kind of individual animals. I mean, they might be near each other, but I think most people would agree that they're not like your typical, like an elk. I mean, when you find them, they're moving together and working together. And it's not how they work, but how they're communicating is communicating as a herd. That's how you know when you put a new scent in there that it spikes so much interest and sometimes aggressive interest from other bucks is because they don't know what deer it is.
Right. They're trying
200 of them in your area, and they dang well know every single one of them by smell. They know each other, just like we could go shake each other's hands knowing who we are.
So basically,
I think that's why they paw out the scrapes.
They're trying to get rid of.
I think that is the deer version of a middle finger to the other buck. That's what I think that
It's also
is.
leaving their.
Hey, if you Bill, this is my spot.
Or the not so slanderish way of saying it would be like a dog peeing over top of another dog that peed on a tree.
Yeah, but you don't think those dogs are cussing too?
Yeah,
I think
I'm
those
sure
dogs are super aggressive about it, especially the pit bulls. You know they're throwing slander out there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. They're holding their,
like a
they're holding their pistol
Juice
sideways.
did not have a clean mouth, I guarantee you. He lost an eyeball, man.
And he still kept fighting.
Yeah,
All
that
right.
dude was into some hardcore stuff.
So that people would understand. So we have used the scents now all year long, and we've seen results from them all year long. Your best results come from, for us here in the Midwest, and so that you guys can be relative, September, October, like month, 2 months, once those bucks come out of the rut, come out of velvet, they really start to.
They're finally establishing a social hierarchy.
They start really focusing on communicating with the other bucks and the other does.
Did you have one epiphany moment using glands? Like, holy crap. I have one.
I don't know if it was one. I don't have one moment. That year when I decided, okay, I'll try this, I couldn't believe the number of deer I had hitting a scrape.
Did you have one?
Yeah, last year was massive.
Was there a particular one, though?
Well, one specific deer that really made me understand it.
Which one?
Kramer. The only reason being is because, and I'm saying this because it kind of goes the opposite direction, but that deer was the only reason I kept food out last year, because he was in a place where I'd thrown some food out because it's in the middle of BFE. I mean, there's not really trees or anything, and I was surprised to get him. The only reason I kept that camera and kept putting food there was because he was the only deer that showed up to it besides a bunch of does and fawns, because I was like, I'm going to watch this deer grow. All my other scrapes, though, I had gone into the season thinking I'm going to see if I can have some inventory just on scrapes, not using food. The only reason I even had one food was because of that buck, because all my other cameras blew up with not just one buck, but I had multiple bucks that would not just come in either, like once in a while. I was pretty positive that I was going to be able to watch them grow because I would get them so consistently. Like it might not be every single day, but I was getting them every time I would check that camera. I was watching that buck come by at some point and leave his scent.
Not hitting food.
Not hitting no food.
Just hitting
not whatsoever. That was the difference. That's what made me. I was like, really?
You must have an epiphany, though. Where was your epiphany?
Mine was when we were discussing which scents we were going to make, and I think it was you that said we need to make buck junkie. You said we need to have mix these two, which one was the forehead gland because they're rubbing that on trees. And I remember telling you, actually, I was like, no, I don't think so. I think these deer are just fired up and they want to flip off their buddy, like basically super, like a teenager to maybe through your 20s, where a guy just has lots of testosterone and they're a deer. To me, like they're fired up and they're hitting a tree just because they need to get some frustration out, like there's not really a true reason. Like they're just, I'm going to rip that tree up. And you were like, no, they're putting their gland on there. And so I remember we did put out rub trees at that time before and had cameras on it. And I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, then I'll be able to see them actually smelling it. Otherwise, that's not true. And so then I went and watched these trail camera videos, and every single one, I mean, they don't take very long, but you'll watch every single one. They'll come up and they'll take about a second or two and they'll sniff the tree, and then they'll hit it. Every single time. And I watched like 30 before I would allow myself to accept it.
Yeah, and then you shot a 170-inch deer off of it.
And then I was like, holy shit, he's right. Like it's absolutely, they're there's more to this than they're just hitting this tree because they're horned up or whatever. Like there's a purpose here behind this. And so then I was like, yeah, we need to definitely make this come out with this scent too.
And so then
then that's continued to be that way.
Oh, and we take those trees, not just those trees, but where we make scrapes, and they come back and you watch, and they're not just thrashing their antlers. And I'd say that so that people will start paying attention, because I was the guy when I got a cool video like that, it was like, ooh, look at this, especially if it's a big buck. He's just freaking out. You start watching, they're not just freaking out. There is an intentional way that they're doing that. They're rubbing their eye, their nose, they're licking it. They're doing all sorts of things. And if you start to really break it down and realize what they're doing, it can become something in your arsenal that's like you're talking about, me and you now have killed 2 bucks that came to our rub trees with our scents on them. And I believe that those deer would have been in that timber, but I don't think they would have been in the location. In my particular case, it wasn't timber, it was in a field, and brought him right to it.
Well, I can think of 3 different circumstances now where I believe that that rub tree is a communication aspect as far as establishing dominance, because
100%.
when those 2 bucks fought or messed around when I shot that deer, he didn't go right to them. He came back to me. Yeah, it wouldn't have made sense for the route that he took unless he was going to hit the rub tree, which he was within a foot of it when I shot him. We got that on video too. But then the other one I could think of was Alyssa's last year.
Yep.
Mr. Alyssa, I'd rattled to this buck and tried a different buck and couldn't find him. But wasn't sure where he went. And then I looked out the friggin' side window. I was like, oh crap, here comes that buck. And so we start getting ready, and then I look up, and Mr. Liss is at the rub tree. And then the other buck starts going to the rub tree, and they start like squaring off between the rub tree.
Right.
And so then I realized that the only reason he went to that, he must have heard the rattling, I'm assuming. Maybe he was just on his way. Either way, he was going to the rub tree, and I think he was going there to tell that other buck, you might want to be careful, or I'm going to mess you up.
That's how that's exactly how they're establishing a dominance or social hierarchy.
And then
just by
flung an
leaving
arrow over his back.
Yeah, that was
rough.
But
you just had to put that in there for her, didn't you?
No, I just kept thinking about. I was like, everybody's like, well, how did it end? Did you shoot the deer?
Right. Well, in your case, you killed a booner off of one of the rub trees. In my case, I killed one of a 6-year-old deer that was been on our hit list for 2 years, and in Alyssa's case, she missed, but she got a shot, a 23-yard shot. 23
yards, yeah.
Yeah, 23-yard shot, and all these would have been up close and personal.
Yeah. Well, each deer, like I've reiterated 17 times, has their own scent, but as they become more dominant, because this is where it comes into play that it's an issue at the same time. And I use him as an example because he didn't do it, but he put one in the spot that did do this. But each one smells different. And as they get older as well and they become a more dominant deer, they have a much more potent smell, and they're producing a lot more oil on their forehead. And so if a 2-year-old comes up and rubs a tree, they'll smell it, obviously, and they know what deer it is. But then your 6-year-old comes up and rubs a tree. That's all he has to do, because that's him. One, it's going to overpower the other one. And number 2, he's saying, hey, yep, I just put all my scent over top of yours. And now they know what buck and the dominance of what buck it is too. But if you screw that up, because I always tell people, don't rely on any scent, including our own. Don't rely on any scent or any product to bring deer miles away or to get them to move from where their natural area is. Find where they're at, and once you get them to hit, say a scrape or a rub, once you get one deer to hit that scrape or rub, you're going to be good, because that means you've gotten that one to know that there's another deer there, and now it's communicating, and now that it's just a snowball effect. Now the issue you can have with that is if you have the wrong first deer hit it. Because Warren had this happen. You know where I'm going?
Yeah.
Yeah. His deer he killed last year, and he put a rub tree into that spot for the first time. And he was pumped about it, which I was surprised, because he actually did something during the summer, or late summer. But the first possible deer he has, we're like, man, nothing's hit it for a day or two, which sometimes that's a long time. Other times it'll be 20 minutes, and you'll have a deer come hit something that you put up. But in this circumstance, we're waiting for this to happen. And, of course, the first deer that shows up is Magnum. And so Warren is like, oh, let's go. We got him to hit it and everything. Well, he's the biggest deer there. and he was also a dominant mature deer. And he hits that tree, not another deer touched it. We swapped the tree out. Was it me and you that did it, or I tried it?
I think you did it because I was
wanted to
gone
see.
somewhere and my camera was dead. So
And he had knocked it over too, didn't he?
No, he did that afterwards.
Well,
later on.
The second one,
when he
which
just
I think
kept
actually
leaning
pissed
on
him off even more. Because so what happened is the most dominant deer in the area came and hit this rub tree, and not another. You could watch the video of other deer that would come up and be like, "Yeah, I'm good."
They did make a scrape next to it though.
Yeah, that's all they had the balls to do is make a scrape next to
They weren't
it.
going to touch it.
So when we swapped it, and we got, I think if I remember right, it was a little forked horn hit it first, and after the forked horn hit it first, then every deer started hitting it, including Magnum. And ironically enough, it's not like once Magnum hit it, they all stopped.
Right.
No, they knew other deer were communicating, and they're probably still kicking, so they're good. So that was one circumstance where you have it work perfectly.
The right deer hit it.
But the wrong right deer hits it, and it screws you.
I also put that one in there where I called it Magnum bedroom.
Yeah, you screwed up on where we put it.
But I think maybe I didn't though, because maybe he'd have just kept hitting it himself.
He might have, but what benefit would that have done? Because at that point, you're gonna be trying to figure out what consistency he's hitting it, as opposed to if you put it in there and other deer hitting it. If you can tell when another deer hit it, or you go put your scent on it, then he's gonna know dang well he's coming.
I'd said this one before, but I'm sure we have lots of new listeners by now. I made a huge mistake on where I did put that one last year because I put that rub tree in the middle of his bedroom. And so then I had all these pictures of all these deer hitting it, and there's no way, impossible to get to this thing. Yeah. Like, there was no way I could ever hunt this, and unless I was going to go literally play poker, and we were going chips all in one morning.
Yeah.
Because there was no way I could have done it. And so in hindsight, I was like, wow, that was really stupid. I have nowhere to be able to
put your rub trees where you can hunt them.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I just want to make sure that I don't want to run out of time. What sense, and me and you differ a little bit, I think all three of us might differ a little bit on what sense are we putting now as opposed to what we're going to do in a month and then a month after that. Which glandular sense? Because that's the true question.
Right now I put out Scrape Queen and Scrape King, which is just a buck and a doe preorbital. All I'm doing, I don't care about dominance or hierarchy. All I want to do is establish a scrape that they are going to start using as a community scrape. And so all that's doing is gets them start hitting it, and then it's going to last throughout the season. I mean, I'll refresh it and everything and last throughout the season to where I can hunt it. But then what I'm doing once I get to season where I can actually hunt something is when I introduce a new deer. And all I'm doing there is I take my buck junkie now, which is a forehead and salivary, put that on there. And so they've already been communicating. They've become somewhat accustomed to who a Scrape King is or who the Scrape Queen is. And I'll turn around and give them a whole new one. So now all these bucks that think that they have some kind of hierarchy established just threw a pretty big hitch in their plans, considering I just gave them the most dominant gland, the forehead, as well as the salivary gland. So all the reference there is, or the goal there is start them in where I want them at, and then after I've started them, when it comes time, I introduce something new to really either piss them off, make them curious, just enough to get them to come over. That's all I want, so I can hunt it.
You want to go next?
Yeah, I have a question real quick.
Okay.
I can go and piss in a scrape, and deer will go and hit it. Why do I need to buy scents?
Was it already a scrape there?
Probably.
Yeah, the only thing you're doing is nothing to do with pee. The only thing you're doing is giving it moisture.
You're reactivating what scent was already there.
That's exactly why we tell you to carry water bottles with you, and I have gallons in my bed of my truck all the time, because every time I go to a scent or a scrape, instead of refreshing it every single time with new scent, dump some water on it.
Pour some water in.
Because all that moisture holds water, or scent holds in moisture. So all you got to do is, if it's super dry, pee on it if you really want to.
Wait, so you're just telling me that it's not just my piss they're coming to in a scrape?
It has nothing to do with your piss.
Okay, so
it's moisture.
Obviously, I'm playing devil's advocate on that one.
Yeah.
So the reason that you can pee in a scrape and it will work is because you're just reactivating the scents that the deer have put there.
Yep.
So I would say that we'd be confident to challenge somebody to go try and make a new scrape by just pissing in it. and see how well it does for you.
And
don't put it somewhere where you know they're going to be starting a scrape anyways.
Yep.
Somewhere where like
Well,
it would have to be intentional for them to come hit it.
I mean, I would like them to do it just so that they can prove to themselves because they won't believe me. I did that because everybody was talking about you could go make your own scrapes. Before I ever heard of scents or like glandular scents or certain ways of things to put into it, I was like, oh, I guess I can just break a stick. I'll scrape some stuff off the ground or whatever below it, and I'll pee in it and then just wait, right? I mean, I had a couple that would eventually turn out.
Come by.
But 9 times out of 10, I couldn't get anything to come in. I could not figure out why. There's no reason for them to unless they happen to stumble across something that's already convenient for them to put their scent down in.
All right. Well, hold on, though, because I differ a little bit on what scents this time of year.
Yeah, what do you use?
I like Scrape King straight across the board, paste and spray. That's my go-to. To this day, that's still my personal favorite scent until we get to the time when we start putting rub trees in. When we start putting rub trees in, that is where the Buck Junkie just overrules the forehead and salivary on that tree.
Buck Junkie gets hard to beat just because it's cool.
Have
them ripping up trees.
Well, here's the thing I will say is I've used it on scrapes now, and I can't say that I'm getting any less activity. I don't think I'm getting any
use
more.
Them on scrapes.
Yeah, I'm putting it. I'm using the oil and putting the oil up on the limbs above. But I just think that the preorbital. Yeah, absolutely. And so you can mix and match. The only thing that I'm not introducing yet is the Scrape Queen.
Yep.
I'm not doing that yet.
See, I used to be flipped with that. I used to wait till it was closer to the rut so that they knew there was another doe in the area, and I've completely flipped that process to test this year specifically. I was like, yeah, I'm just because we don't have any of the like in heat gland or at the point of time when a doe is in heat to pull any of those glands or anything. That's not what it's made from. It's just typical or their regular glandular scent. And I put that out this year, and I've pretty religiously done like more so Scrape Queen than Scrape King, and I've gotten more consistent bucks this year than I have even in the previous years. And so I'm kind of the theory that they're just trying to hang out near each other. Like, I mean, obviously they're near each other, especially when you find all these bachelor groups and everything too. But all I do is now put where a doe has come by and made herself very known. He might as well come make himself very well known too. That's the only theory I have behind why it's working so much better in the middle of the summer as opposed to because I've used Scrape King and it works great during the summer, but I use Scrape King and Scrape Queen together and it seems like there's a little bit of an edge for me. I might have
to try it. So, and then the next question that we get from a lot of people is when do we put our rub trees in? And
I'm always earlier than you.
Yep, you go early. I don't believe they need to be in. If you put them in a week or two before they're coming out of velvet, I think you're on time because they're not. They still will come to one. I mean, I've had them in early. I know you've put them in early, and they'll come up and sniff it and lick it, but they're not going to start rubbing on it until that velvet comes off.
Yep.
And so that's what you're really banking on, and so that's why. And so for someone out there thinking of when, you want to wait until then, or you can go put it in now. It's not going to hurt anything.
The most important thing I think anybody should know on that is if you're going to go put your own rub tree in. When you put it in is not nearly as important as when you cut it. If you cut it the year before or something like that, or you have a bunch laying around, don't screw with it. Wait to go cut your limbs. It might be a couple months before you need them, but then go cut them so that they're fresh and they're somewhat alive, and then put them in. And I feel like I put mine in early. 1, for convenience sake, I get them in, don't worry about them anymore. And 2, because I'm so anxious. So it makes me feel better.
Right.
But then I get really pissed off because I'm sitting there waiting for it to happen, and I know I've still got to wait another 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'm trying to figure out why they aren't doing it, and I know they have velvet on their antlers. So the logic doesn't check out. I think it keeps me sane and drives me insane. So
well, and then we differ on one thing in that I concrete mine in. I will pack concrete to them because I learned my lesson.
That's because your packing is a mule.
Okay, well, I drive to wherever I need to.
I am of the theory, I'm pretty sure most of you guys listening are probably in the same boat as me, and I don't get to drive things to every one of my stands or anything else. And if I am going to go somewhere, it is going to be probably 400, 500, 600 yard plus, if not up to like 2 miles, to walk concrete bags into the freaking backwoods.
I'm not walking concrete bags 2 miles in either.
Yeah, because you can drive in.
Not everywhere. There's places that I put them that I can't drive right to them.
Oh, really? How far is the walk? 50 yards?
Yeah, it might be 50 yards.
Yeah, I could do that
yards.
too. Oh,
I
my
think
goodness.
I'm gonna rent Dad a cement truck
Yeah.
He can just get the other 50 yards.
Mm-hmm.
The day
That's
we
funny.
get it 200, we're gonna need a cement truck.
You need a pump truck, is what you need.
They just need to man up. You know, if you want to do it right, do
Coming
it right.
from the guy that can't even pick up a 100-pound pack anymore.
Okay. Kids these days can't. Take
I
them
also
anywhere.
use a smaller limb, so.
Right, I don't. I use big trees. I like the good ones that they have a harder time pushing over. So, all right, but then we've talked about early, then we talked about like pre-rut. Then when it gets to the rut, it sounds like you're just adding that new element.
Yeah, that's what I do. And I most of the time I pull one. I'll swap it. So like I'll pull out my scrape queen and put buck junkie in, or pull out my scrape king and put buck junkie in. So I always have 2 cents that are out typically.
And I would say, like I said before, is my buck junkie kicks in on the rub trees, but I'm sticking with scrape king. I would start to then add the scrape queen. I feel like as we get there, I got does coming through here. You know, now they're more interested in that. So that's my philosophy behind that. But you can mix and match this stuff any way you want and see what works out.
When I get into the rut though, I put in its excessive amounts of the LHD, which is our 4th one,
right?
Which is a doe in heat, but it's their glands in heat. I mean, we have some of their urine in there. We also have their interdigital that's in there too, and then 3 other glands too, but the interdigital specifically. And I'll put that out just to distract deer. Even if I'm not trying to like I'll drag it in sometimes,
right? But
a lot of times I'll just set it somewhere where if I feel as though maybe I have a marginal wind, it'll at least calm them down. And I have literally had does come in and kind of look at like what in the world is going on here. They get a little bit further or catch a whiff of that, and they're like, oh, there was another deer here, so it's all good, and they keep going. And I've had lots of bucks check it out. But
all right, I think that have we covered everything that.
That's all the sense.
Here's the one thing that I would tell you, which is what Warren was talking about, and that is start paying a close attention to your trail cameras if you're using any kind of sense and see what the deer are doing. And that's where all these cameras now offer video. When we started watching video, it really told us a lot more about what was going on.
You can learn a lot more with video mode.
Absolutely.
If you just think in the mode of if they're doing something, like as much as we just see them being a deer, they're probably doing something intentionally. That's where we came into the play of like, oh, they're thrashing their antlers around in the trees. No, they're not. They're rubbing their forehead gland around and their preorbital gland around. So you'll start picking up. You'll sit in a tree stand and you'll see one rub or you'll see one lick a tree or something. You're like, what in the world? Deer are so weird. No, I mean, yeah, they're weird, but they're doing their thing.
Yeah, they're doing what they need to do, and there's an intention behind what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if you can figure out those intentions, you can use that to put an arrow or a bullet in them.
You could create a method of madness to beat their method of madness.
It's cool. I can tell you, it becomes somewhat addicting once you start learning about them.
And it's a lot cheaper than buying food. I can tell you that my bill last year for the summer was excessive. I went through so much corn. Right. It was bad.
Well, and then we can't, now just to clarify, he can't bait during hunting season. It was pre-season that you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just talking about getting trail camera videos, and oh my gosh.
Yeah, we can't. In some states you can, but here in Iowa you cannot. So, and then I guess the last thing on that is the one nice thing about when you're trying to get pictures of deer coming to scrapes, you can eliminate by not having the food there. You eliminate all the extra stuff: the coons, the opossums, the skunks, turkeys, everything else. You're pretty much just going to get deer pictures. Cows don't.
Oh, there's a pro tip: do not put bug junkies somewhere where cows exist. I'm just pre-warning you there.
Or bears.
Bears and cows. If you have bears and cows, be careful where you put your buck junkie. Just saying.
Yeah, in those states that have bears, we've had people that have sent in pictures and said, "This bear loves your buck junkie."
Yeah.
So it's saying something. All right. Well, thank you guys
Warren's
again.
wacky fact.
Oh Lordy, we got to get a wacky fact in.
High heels were originally worn by men. In the 10th century, men in Europe adopted the now gendered fashion choice of heels to make it easier to ride their horses. Adding heels to their boots made it easier to stay in their stirrups. And I believe that is why America chose to break off. They could see this coming.
Hold on, there's still heels in cowboy boots.
Yeah, we're talking these heels.
No.
Yes.
See,
high
those
heels.
No, those high heels now are to make women's butts
high
look better.
heels. What?
That's what a heel is for.
What? How?
It's fancy for one, and two,
It's
it
on their
makes
foot.
It makes their butt look better.
How?
Same reason when you stand when they do their little poses on Instagram and they put one foot forward and they break their neck to turn around and look at the mirror, it's making their butt look better on the position of their feet. I promise. Ask a girl. You put heels on.
This has nothing to do with glandular sense at all.
I know about this one. Okay, I pay attention to this one quite strongly.
They must have used that tip for this because there was a successful Tinder match in Antarctica in 2014.
Wait, what does that even mean? What classifies a successful Tinder match?
That two people matched that were in Antarctica at the same time.
What's that got to do with heels?
Yeah,
because there's probably only well, I guess that doesn't make any sense because there's only probably one other person. I didn't even know there was people in Antarctica. I thought it was uninhabited.
What do you think? Where do you think Eskimos come from?
No, I don't think they live in Antarctica either. It's uninhabitable.
No, people actually live in Antarctica.
I don't think so.
I don't know if there's towns, but people
I don't know.
There you go.
All right, we've gone way off topic. So
what Warren's Wacky Facts will do to you.
Warren's Wacky Facts. So thank you guys again for tuning in to the Raised Hunting Podcast. I hope that we clarified some stuff about the glandular sense and glandular versus urine. But the main thing that we want to ask you guys to continue to do is reviews. You guys are doing excellent, and send in your tips and topics, and we'll see if we'll end up using just like we used Devin's today.
And let us know if you have an opinion on what heels are used for. You guys are allowed to comment on Warren's Wacky Facts. So
Easton's hoping that some of you young ladies will send pictures of the heels, and
I am accepting applications.
Oh, Lordy. All right, that's the Raised Hunting crew signing off. Thank you, guys.
That was for you.